I really need to bring all of my holiday decorations down a little bit so you guys can actually see them, but I'm really lazy right now, so I'm not gonna do it. Hi guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for tonight's video, we are doing an anti-haul. So I believe this is anti-haul number 5. I think 4 or 5. So I have a bunch of makeup releases that I have just pulled in from Trend Mood, and I want to talk about why I feel so inclined not to purchase them. So I'm just gonna hop right into the video. I don't have a whole lot to say just because I literally just filmed a video. I filmed this makeup look for you guys. So if you guys are interested in this makeup look, it will be up on my channel probably after this video. So probably on Wednesday. I think this video is gonna go up on Monday, and I think this eye look and look will go up on Wednesday, I think. Alright, so we are pulling into anti-haul. So the first thing that I want to anti-haul is from Colourpop. So I did recently just purchase the Raw Beauty Kristi and Colourpop collaboration. I'm very excited for that one, so I will not be anti-hauling that. I am very, very excited for that collection. That collection is so gorgeous. That palette is super pretty and it just screams Kristi, and I'm very excited for her to have another collaboration, and the fact that it's just a really gorgeous palette just makes it even better. So the first thing that I am anti-hauling is the Colourpop Galaxy collection. So it's like their Star Wars thing. It kind of is the Baby Yoda palette. I'm just not into it. It does have really pretty colors, and it does have a color story that I would actually be interested in, but the greens are really muted. It's kind of like a mint almost color, and I already have a lot of shades that are similar to this. I don't really need a silver eyeshadow. I don't need a gold eyeshadow. I don't need a random brown eyeshadow. I really just don't need this palette. I already have this palette basically in my collection in all of the palettes that I already own. So I just don't need this palette. This palette is not expensive. I believe it only retails for 16 USD. It's not expensive at all. Colourpop is very affordable. It's just not a palette that I'm really interested in, and I've never actually seen Star Wars or know anything about Star Wars. So I'm not inclined to buy it because I just don't care. I also haven't watched The Mandalorian. I just really don't care. So this isn't a palette that I am going to buy, and I just wasn't hyped for it whatsoever. So I'm going to pass on this. I don't need it, and I'm not going to buy it. So the next thing that I want to talk about is, again, from the brand Glam Light. So this is that burger palette. Glam Light, I believe, is the company that always does like really random food palettes. They do a bunch of different palettes that are like in different shapes, and I'm just not into it. I don't like themed makeup. I've already talked about that in probably all of my anti-hauls. I'm just really not into themed makeup, and this just looks like it's going to be excessively hard to store. The palette that I already own that is ridiculous to store is the Alien palette from Jeffree Star, and that palette is a really, really big pain in the ass, and I'm just not into storing palettes that are in weird shapes. I just don't need it. It is a 9-pan palette, and some of the shadows kind of almost seem like they repeat. The two blues are very similar, and I really just don't need any of the shades that are already in here. It also just isn't a cohesive palette. There is like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 mattes and 4 shimmers, and none of the colors really seem like they would go that well together, in my opinion, so it's just not a palette that I would ever reach for. That blue in the middle is really, really pretty, but again, there isn't anything in this palette that I would pair with it. So I don't particularly think I would need this palette, and I'm not going to spend, how much is it? $40, 40 USD for a palette shaped in the shape of a hamburger. That's ridiculous. I don't need it. I'm not gonna buy it. Don't need that. So this is from the brand Nobla Cosmetics. So this is their Holiday 2020 palette. How the hell is this a holiday palette? This is a neutral palette. This is a very, very, very standard neutral boring palette, and I don't need it. It is a 16 shade palette, I believe, 4, 8, 12, yeah, 16 shades, and it is very, very, very nude and very, very, very boring. It does not scream interesting at all for me. It kind of reminds me of the Tati palette, as in the sense that it's very neutral and very boring, and I just don't need it. For 39 USD, that is not something that I'm ever going to spend on a neutral palette. I really don't buy neutral palettes because I don't find them interesting. I find neutral palettes very overhyped, and I just don't see the need to have this many of the same freaking color scheme that's already on the marketplace, released time again and again and again. It's just not something that I'm actually interested in, so I'm never really going to purchase it. It's not something that I see when it's released that I'm very excited for. I know tons of people love neutral palettes, but I'm just not one of those people. I know I'm wearing a kind of neutral look today, but it is paired with some greens, so not really at the same time. I always kind of throw in a little bit of a spin of color just because neutral palettes bore me. I'm not interested. So the next thing is the Disney collection from Makeup Revolution. So Disney, again, just seems like it's just basically saying to any company that is like, hey, I want to do a collaboration. Disney's like, yeah, I'll do one with you. That is a loud vehicle. Disney is literally done so many Disney collections with Colourpop that I'm so fucking sick of it. I am not interested in this collection whatsoever. It is just not something that I'm going to buy. I don't need a Disney collection. I really just don't. And honestly, I heart Revolution, so I believe that is part of the Revolution, Makeup Revolution palettes, and I've only ever used one of their palettes and it was terrible, so I'm not really actually interested in trying them out again, just because the palette that I do own was so shitty that I'm just really turned off from them. But as a whole, this is a very overdone kind of collaboration, because Makeup Revolution is kind of hitting the Disney phase a little bit late, because Colourpop has already done it so many fucking times that I'm just really not interested in this palette at all. It's very, very, very overdone. So I'm not going to buy it. It's very inexpensive. It only retails for, I believe it's like 20 USD, but I'm just not interested in it. It's very boring. It is a full collection. There's a Cinderella, a Beauty and the Beast, and a Princess and the Frog, but it's not something I'm gonna buy because I don't need another themed makeup palette, especially a Disney one. I don't need it. I'm not gonna buy it. So the next thing is from the Juvia's Color Stories palette, so Juvia's Play. So this is a really pretty palette. It looks really, really gorgeous, but it is too many colors at once, and it's too many repeated colors. There is literally three blues in here that look exactly the same. There is some deeper, kind of almost like royal blues that look exactly the same. It's just there's too many repeated colors in here that they could have made this palette a lot smaller, and it probably would have been a little bit more appealing to the eye. Right now it just looks like there's going to be a lot of repeated shades that you don't necessarily need, and it's just, I don't need it. I don't need to spend $38 on a shimmery, basically blue palette. It is blue with a little bit of pops of some warm tones in there, so there's like an orange, a pink, some orangey kind of shimmery colors, kind of like a copper color, but I really don't need it. It's kind of an unnecessary palette considering how many shades repeated, and it's just not something that I'm really interested in. When I saw this, I was like, oh, Juvia's Place released like a really big palette, and then I looked at it and I was like, oh, I don't need that. So I don't need it, I'm not gonna buy it. So the next thing that I wanna talk about is from the brand Unicorn Cosmetics. So this is their Halloween palette. So obviously I'm late to this palette, seeing this palette, because it is November, but I just don't get this palette. It doesn't seem cohesive at all. There is the center of it where it has like those two different colors palettes in like the same pan, and it's like split right down the middle with colors that don't even really go together whatsoever, like a silver and a red, a purple and I think a black or a really dark brown, a pink and a blue. Like the color stories that they threw in the center just looks really confusing. It doesn't look cohesive. And then the mattes that are on top don't really go together at all. There's like a mint, a white, kind of like an olive color, then like a mustard color, and then a peach color. Like, I don't know, this palette just doesn't make sense. It almost seems like Unicorn Cosmetics is like confused as to what the hell they're releasing. This does not scream Halloween to me. Halloween is like oranges, blacks, greens, purples, and I'm missing all of those. I think there's only one black in here called Reaper. Everything else is completely missed. This is not a Halloween palette to me. This is kind of a train wreck, and I don't need it. For, I think it's $26.99 in euros. I definitely don't need that. That's very expensive for a palette that I don't even remotely think is cute. This is just not a Halloween palette to me. Just because you made a really ugly palette doesn't mean it's Halloween-y. It's just ugly. That's just my opinion, but I'm not going to buy it. I don't need it, and no thank you. So the next palette is again from the brand Colourpop. So this is the Stone Cold Fox palette. Obviously I don't need this palette because it's boring as fuck. It's super, 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 super boring. I've seen a couple tutorials on it and I've not been interested in it at all. It's just so fucking boring. It's just another neutral palette. Neutral eyeshadows. I don't need this many neutral eyeshadows. It's just, this is a really, really big palette considering it's all neutrals. There's nothing really colorful in it at all. It's literally just all neutrals, and that's so fucking boring. That's like when the Jeffree Star released his cremated palette, I was so bored. I was like, what the hell? This is so fucking boring. It's just boring. I don't know how many times I'm gonna say that in this video, but this is the Stone Cold Fox palette. It retails for $34. It's 30 new shade mattes with sparkle metallics. So I don't know if Colourpop is trying to be Morphe, but I don't need a 30 pan palette full of neutrals. I don't need that. I don't know anybody that needs that, and I'm not going to buy that. That is incredibly boring. Don't need it, not gonna buy it. I know a lot of people like neutrals and a lot of people like that palette, but I'm not one of them. It's just, I would not get any use out of it because I would never use it. I would never ever reach for it, ever. So the next palette is from the brand KKW Beauty. This is a birthstone palette, so inspired by Kim's birthstone, the opal. So this is the opalescent pressed powder. It retails for $45. $45 for 1, 2, 3, 4 for 10 shades is very expensive considering the shades are boring. Pinks and purples and then some neutrals because it is Kim Kardashian and her whole entire brand is neutrals. So this is more of a unique palette, I guess, for Kim Kardashian because she usually releases really boring palettes that I would never buy. But this isn't a palette that I need. It kind of looks like kids makeup to me. It reminds me of the makeup that you would get at like Claire's because it's like pinks and purples and I just don't need it. Don't get me wrong, I like pink and purple eyeshadow, but not like this. This is just really boring. This is like Kim Kardashian's way of saying, hey, we can be fun, and it's not fun at all. It's just kind of falls flat for me. And $45 is a very expensive price considering I live in Canada. That would be about $60 to probably high 60s to $70 for a palette that is very boring and you can really only get a couple looks out of. I don't need it. I'm not gonna buy it. It's just not something that I'm really that interested in, and I don't really need to support Kim Kardashian or any of the Kardashians or any of the Jenners. They have so much fucking money that my hard-earned money does not really need to go to them. They're so fucking rich that I've never been actually inclined to purchase anything from them, and I probably won't. So the next brand is the Chichi Cosmetics 32 shades from Mauve Nudes. So again, it's a neutral palette. It's a nude palette. It's pretty. There is a lot of really pretty shimmery shades in here that I don't have in my collection, but it's just too big of a palette for me personally. I don't need 32 neutral shades and it's just too big. I don't like big eyeshadow palettes like this. It just reminds me of Morphe, and I have a couple Morphe palettes that I really don't get to use the full shade range out of it because there's just too many fucking colors in it that it's so hard to come up with a look because I'm just overwhelmed by all of the choices. I like smaller palettes. I like palettes that are a lot smaller and more contained. So something like this is probably the biggest palette that I would prefer. Something along this lines, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a 15 shade palette. This is about as big as I like palettes to be. I don't need anything that is 30 plus shades. It's just too overwhelming. Plus, when you get to palettes that are 30 plus shades, you kind of start to get repeated shades. So I just don't need a 32 pan palette shadow palette, and it retails for 49 Australian, so that is very expensive. I don't need it. I'm not gonna buy it. So the next one is from the brand Rare Beauty. This is Selena Gomez's eyeshadow palettes. So these are the two eyeshadow palettes. They're complete shimmers. There's no mattes to them. I don't need that. I do not need two eyeshadow palettes that have no mattes in them whatsoever, that are literally just shimmers. You can't even create a cohesive look because you would need to use another palette to get your mattes in there, especially for me because I like to use mattes and shimmers. I don't ever like to just use mattes, and I don't ever like to do just shimmers. This isn't a palette that I would actually reach for because it does not have any mattes in it whatsoever. It's literally just shimmers. I also think the colors are incredibly ugly. I think the colors that she chose don't really work together at all, and I'm just not impressed by it. I honestly just think this is an ugly palette, like both of the palettes. There's the green, blue, red, yellow, white, pink palette, then the purple, pink, purple, white, orange, kind of goldy, kind of almost like a copper color. I think that those colors together are really ugly. That's just my personal opinion. I just don't find these palettes to be attractive at all, and that is the reason why I personally wouldn't get them, just because I don't actually feel drawn to them at all. I think they're actually really ugly. So that's just my personal opinion. And again, they're only $25, but 25 USD is still expensive in Canada, especially for palettes that I'm not actually drawn to at all. So I'm going to pass. I do like what Rare Beauty stands for, and I do like Selena Gomez's brand as a whole. She has a really, really awesome message behind her brand, but I don't really like celebrities getting into makeup. I know makeup is like a multi-billion-dollar thing to get into, but you already have so much fucking money. Why do you need to make a beauty brand? I don't know. I kind of get rubbed the wrong way when celebrities continuously dive into the makeup world just because it seems like a quick cash grab for them. But I do like what Rare Beauty stands for, so I'm a little bit more okay with Selena Gomez entering the beauty scene than I am some of the other celebrities that I've entered in the past. So the next one is from the brand, so this is a holiday collection from BH Cosmetics. So this is the Naughty palette, so it's a 30 shade eyeshadow palette. Again, 30 shades I don't need. It's only $29, so that is very inexpensive. BH Cosmetics is a very inexpensive brand, but this doesn't really look like a holiday palette to me. Royal Blue doesn't really scream holidays to me, and there's nothing in this palette that actually is that holiday to me. To me, holidays is like emerald green and reds and silvers and golds. I guess blue is kind of a holiday color, but that is more of a purpley blue. It's not really a, I don't know, it's not really a holiday blue for me. I just don't think this palette is very holiday at all. It just kind of seems random. It doesn't seem like it was well thought out at all, and it just doesn't look like a holiday collection. It just kind of looks like BH Cosmetics is releasing a palette for the holidays because they had to release a holiday palette. This palette just doesn't seem well thought out at all, and the colors are really random and really thrown together, and there's no cohesiveness in the palette at all, so it's really kind of just like colors thrown all over the place, and it's just not appealing to me. I just don't need it. So the big one is $29 and the small one is $12. The small one is more of a holiday palette to me. The small one, I would say, has the gold, it has some pinks in it, it has some silvers in it, but again, it's missing the green and it's missing the red. So I don't need it, I'm not gonna buy it. So the next one is one that you actually can't get anymore, so I'm just gonna rant about this one just because I want to rant about this one. Need a drink. So this is the Colourpop Disney again Hocus Pocus collection. What the actual fuck was Disney thinking when they made this palette? This palette doesn't even remind me of Hocus Pocus whatsoever. The color story is completely wrong in my opinion, and the top row is again just neutral shades that are unnecessary. I don't need them. I get it, in eyeshadow palettes you need to have transition colors and everybody argues that, but I already have those fucking shades in my collection from Colourpop. So it's just unnecessary to put them in this palette. It also just does not look like a Hocus Pocus palette at all. It's just so missed the mark for me. It's just such a boring palette. All of the colors look so undersaturated that I'm just not into it. It didn't even remotely spark my interest. I am obsessed with Halloween. I love Hocus Pocus. That movie is such a nostalgic Halloween kids movie, but Colourpop just did them dirty. It doesn't look good at all. I know tons of people were fighting for it, trying to get it, and I know it sold out like that. But I was not interested in it, so I did not pick it up. I did not purchase it. I have absolutely no interest in this palette or this collection at all. I think Colourpop completely missed the mark with this one. So it's very inexpensive. I believe it was only $22 for the palette, which is probably why it sold out as quick as it did, but I don't need it. I'm not gonna buy it. I thought it was very, 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 very disappointing. So don't need it, not gonna buy it. The next thing is from the brand BH Cosmetics again. So this is their Halloween collection. Again, I'm behind, I know I am, but this palette is not a Halloween palette whatsoever. They more or less made a rainbow palette. They're missing an orange, they are missing a green, they're missing a really, really spooky purple. They have a yellow, a pink, a purple, like a light purple, a shimmery blue, a silver, a red. Like, it's just, the red is fine, but the rest of the palette is not Halloween-y at all, and I was so confused by the packaging and then looking at the palette itself. I was like, this isn't Halloween. This is so missing the mark for me that I'm so confused. So the big palette retails for $19, so again, very inexpensive, just not Halloween-y. I would not have trademarked this as a Halloween palette. It's just not Halloween-y at all. Not at all. The smaller one, again, it's not Halloween-y because of that bright fucking yellow that's in it. If they had put a green in there, a pumpkin orange in there, something a little bit more of the Halloween colors, I probably could have gotten on board with this. The big palette was $19 and the small palette was $14. The small palette, $14. It's very expensive. I would not pay $14 for 10 shades. That's just not gonna happen for BH Cosmetics. They are a very inexpensive brand, but I'm not in love with their formula enough to pay $14 for a small amount of eyeshadow. So don't need it, not gonna buy it. So the next one, the last one that I wanna talk about is the Jeffree Star Money, it was Blood Money, I think, Blood Money palette. So this is a palette that usually I would be like incredibly excited for because I love green palettes, but why the fuck is there so many random colors in there? I wish Jeffree Star had done a little bit similar to what he did for the Blue Blood collection and had a basically blue eyeshadow palette. He had a couple neutral shades in there that were transition colors, but this one just does not scream interesting to me at all. I've seen some of the looks that he's created from this palette, and although the shadows do look really pretty, it's just not something that I personally need. I already have this palette, which is an actual green and blue eyeshadow palette, which is what I kind of was hoping for from Jeffree Star. I was hoping for a more green skewed palette, whereas this one has a lot of shades in it that I just don't particularly need or want. Like a lot of the browns I don't need, The gold I don't really need. I get it because it's a money themed palette. I understand why those shades are in there, but it's just not an eyeshadow palette that I personally want or need. I already have a lot of the colors that are in here in my collection already, because whenever I see a green palette, I usually jump on board and buy it because green is my favorite color, but this isn't an eyeshadow palette that I would really get a whole lot of use out of. The last time that I got a palette that had some greens in it from Jeffree Star was I think it was the Alien palette, and that is one of my least favorite palettes. I don't particularly need this palette. The collection is really pretty. The collection does have a lot of different things in it. There is a bunch of lip glosses, there is some liners, there is some highlighters, and there is a liquid lipstick, a mini liquid lipstick set. I just don't really need anything from this collection. I also think it was in very poor taste for Jeffree Star to use a alligator for his promotion of his launch. I do think having a live exotic animal on his driveway promoting a beauty brand is just in poor taste. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So that is one of the reasons that I'm not going to be purchasing this collection. I don't need it. It's very boring. It kind of missed the mark for me. It's boring in the sense that it is a very colorful collection, but it's just not an eyeshadow palette that I particularly needed. Unless it's gifted to me, I'm not going to be purchasing it. So if you were looking for me to review it on my channel, it's probably not going to happen because I am not going to be purchasing it myself. And it's very expensive. It'll be about $100 Canadian or so to purchase this palette after shipping and duties and all of that, and I don't need it. It's way too expensive. It doesn't have enough colors in it that I would actually get a lot of use out of. So it's really not a palette that I'm really that interested in, and the alligator thing really just bothered me. So I'm not going to be purchasing it, and if you guys want to purchase it, I will love to watch your guys' videos and see what your guys' reviews were on it, but me personally, I'm not going to purchase it. But that was everything that was in this anti-haul. If I didn't talk about something that has been recently launched, it's probably because I compiled the list of things that I wanted to anti-haul a couple of days ago, and things have launched since then. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys are enjoying these anti-hauls and just getting my opinion on why I'm not going to be buying certain things, please leave me a comment down below. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below for more content like this, and I will see you guys at the next video. Bye!